This lesson is part 2 of an overview of diseases and disease principles. In this slideshow, we're specifically going to look at the chain of infection. Before we look at the specific chain, it's important that you understand the epidemiological theory of disease. And in this theory, it states that in order for someone to get a disease, it's dependent upon the relationship of these 3 factors. The first factor is the disease agent. This is the pathogen that's required for the disease to occur. It can be present and the disease may not occur, but it has to be present in a level that's high enough for the disease to occur. The host is where the disease agent or pathogen typically reproduces. So the host has to be susceptible to the disease agent. And so this means that a person that gets bitten by a tick that has Lyme disease has to be able to get it. Sometimes a person may be exposed to a pathogen and they still do not get it. And the last element is the environment, and the environment has to be favorable. So an example, if I stick with Lyme disease, is that if ticks live in grassy areas and a county decides to trim back open space areas and eliminate grassy areas, that would be an example of eliminating an environmental factor. So if the environment is no longer favorable for ticks to live, then it reduces the risk of the disease. This is what the chain of infection actually looks like. And the reason we're going to discuss it is, just like a chain, if any one link in the chain is broken, the chain of infection is broken. So we're going to look at each of these links in the chain and talk about what they mean. And it's important that you understand, working in healthcare or health services or human services, anytime you can affect one of these links, you can stop the chain of infection and the spreading of the disease. So the first element is an infectious agent, and these are the specific pathogens that cause disease. So what bacteria actually causes gonorrhea? What viral element causes the common cold? What fungus causes ringworm? It's the specific agent that we're discussing that actually causes the disease. The next element in the chain of infection is the reservoir. And the reservoir is where the infectious agent or pathogen typically reproduces. An example, HIV infection reproduces in humans, therefore the reservoir would be human. But if you look at something like Lyme disease reproduces within ticks, so the ticks become the reservoir. Portal of exit is how the pathogen is going to leave the reservoir to get to the host. And there are a variety of portals of exit. It could be a bite, it could be direct contact, it could be a break in the skin. So we're going to look at what's really important in discussing that is the mode of transmission. And this is the way it's transmitted. So there are basic ways that you will see in the literature that diseases are transmitted. The 2 main ways are either direct or indirect. In direct transmission, there's usually a human-to-human contact, and when there is direct transmission, oftentimes the human is the reservoir. So if someone spreads strep throat through kissing, or someone spreads gonorrhea through sexual contact, or a mother transmits a disease to her unborn through body fluids, these are all examples of direct human-to-human contact. The other way that diseases are spread are through indirect contact, and there's 3 main ways. The first is indirect airborne, and the most common one to talk about here is through coughing or sneezing. If someone has a cold or the flu and they're coughing and sneezing, the virus or bacteria actually spreads through the air molecules. So if someone coughs or sneezes, you could actually inhale the pathogen through them coughing or sneezing. Indirect vector-borne is when a living organism like a pet, a tick, or a mosquito transmits a disease from one element to another. So if you look at pets, pets might have the fungus on them that transmit ringworm, or they might have Lyme disease. And the tick that bites them will then spread the Lyme disease. So a mode of transmission might be tick bite or mosquito bite. Another way of indirect transmission is through vehicle-borne, and that means through inanimate objects. So, for example, if staph is found in the surgical area and it gets on instruments, staph infection could spread due to the fact that it was on a vehicle-borne element. Or if someone has a viral infection and they cough and it gets on the desks or pens and someone else touches the desk or pens and then puts their hand to their mouth, that would also be an example of vehicle-borne because it's through an inanimate object. So after we talk about mode of transmission, we have to look at portal of entry. And as you can see, portal of exit, mode of transmission, and portal of entry are all very closely connected. So the portal of entry is how it actually enters the body of the host. And if you look at mode of transmission and portal of exit, you usually can determine what the portal of entry is. And the last element in this chain is the host. And the host, remember, has to be susceptible to the condition or disease. So if, for example, measles or mumps are prevalent in a community, but the host has been vaccinated, the host is not susceptible. So just because all these elements are there, if the host is not susceptible, you cannot spread the disease. So this is a summary of the chain of infection. These are the elements that are in the chain. And remember, if you can break any one link in this chain, you can stop the spreading of diseases. This concludes part 2 of our series of slideshows on disease principles. There's one more section that you'll be looking at on disease principles, and that is part 3.